I'm Matt Stevens and welcome to round 9 of the Men's KISS Super League, the only dedicated esports league to feature professional cycling teams, with all of the action held exclusively on Zwift. Where some of the finest professional riders go head-to-head against some of the best riders from the Zwift community. Now, before we look at what's in store for the riders this week, let's take a look back to round 8 last week, which took place on the Keith Hill after-party circuit and saw an absolutely magnificent victory by Madison Genesis's Ian Bibby, the first rider to take a hat-trick of wins in the KISS Super League. That result left the team standings looking like this. Now, unsurprisingly, Madison Genesis topped the rankings because they've had 5 wins out of 8 races so far. I wonder who's going to break the stranglehold of the British team. So Madison Genesis has topped the rankings with 378 points. Second place at the moment is the Zwift Academy Dream Team with 284. Third, and not too far behind, are the Zwift All-Stars with 222. Then in fourth place, we have Ribble Pro Cycling. Not too far behind them, Camden DHB powered by Bloor Homes. Then we have the Under 23 Dimension Data Team with 128 points. Then we have Team Wiggins Lacole in 7th, Vitus Pro Cycling, who aren't racing this week, in 8th, SEG Racing are 9th, and then in 10th spot, rounding out the top 10, Hagen's Berman Action with 78 points. After collapsing on the floor following his Herculean effort last week, Madison Genesis's Ian Bibby took to social media. Check this out.
Being that workforce, closing down the gaps, making sure the Zwift Academy Dream Team were at least involved to make that final big.
Given what we've seen over the last few rounds, I'm expecting another fast and very, very aggressive race, especially with riders now adapting to the use of power-ups, etc. But the big question is, can any of the other squads break the remarkable stranglehold that Madison Genesis have on the series so far? Over to you, Nathan.
Thanks a lot, appreciate that. Analyst Mr. Greg Leo, who we call the mad scientist of all things Zwift. So, KISS Super League men's round number 9 out here today, and we're going to be on 4 laps of the Watopia Flat Route, 41 kilometers total out there today. It's definitely going to be all about trying to make some breakaways early on, otherwise it's going to be a bunch sprint at the end of the day. As far as the teams showing up today, we've got the usuals as far as the community teams and the All-Stars with the Zwift Academy Dream Team and the Zwift All-Stars out there today. Let's go ahead and go over a couple of the favorites that are most likely to be happening out there today. Being a flatter course from the All-Stars, to be watching out for Mr. Stevie Young as well as Matthew Jujan, who are both showing up out there today. Casey Shum and Kim Little are also out there for the Zwift All-Stars. For that team, you know, the reality is that with this flatter course, Jujan as well as Young are going to be the favorites as far as the sprinters go. But it's been the Zwift Academy Dream Team a lot of times showing up and taking down some sprints, at least being on the podium a lot of times. Ollie Jones is out there and Alex West. They've been showing up week in and week out. Almost every single sprint we've seen, they have been involved. But of course, it is Madison Genesis that has been on the top of the leaderboard in the team standings week in and week out. And as far as who is showing up for Madison Genesis today, it's going to be Ian Bibby that we're going to be watching out for, I think, in that sprint. We do have Joey Walker, Johnny McEvoy, as well as Connor Swift. It looks like John Mould taking the week off this week amongst the Madison Genesis boys. So 51 seconds to go here. Those are unfamiliar with the fast starts of Zwift, these riders are going to start ramping up pretty quickly here in just a moment. We're looking for some orange numbers right from the gate out there. For the course today, it will be Watopia Flat Route, and so they'll be taking a left-hand turn out of these pens and heading directly on over toward Ocean Boulevard. Things will probably stay pretty calm. The main places out on course we watching for, just like every time we hit this Watopia Flat course, it is going to be the leaving of Ocean Boulevard's underground tunnel, and then we'll also be having obviously the volcano section and also the Essies. So the back end of the Essies, watch out for those. I think the volcano section is probably where we'll be watching for the attacks, though. All right, here we go, though. Right from the get-go, we should be watching for some breaks, as it's always been an issue, and the watts are popping here, quads are locked, and it's choker here that we're looking at right from the get-go. 400 watts to stick with the pack. Perhaps it's going to happen. Already maybe struggling a little bit, though, to hang on at 6.4 watts per kilogram, as we do see all of these riders up and out of the saddle here. Alex West there, it looks like, pushing 8.2 watts per kilogram as he flies by in the Team Dimension Data rider there momentarily in order to grab back onto the wheels here. Choker here already now letting a little bit of a gap go. He's going to have to get up and out of the saddle. Many times I've seen this section of the course drop a rider very quickly if they thought that they were going to be hanging on to the rider's wheels. This is a section where they need to be watching out for this gap immediately going out. And already Chokri, Robinson, and Mugisha here now not understanding perhaps that the race starts are screaming fast, and if you let that pack go with the kind of speed that they try and hold on to from the get-go, and if we see counterattacks immediately, we could see two-dimension data riders here off the back and not seeing the front end of this group anytime soon, chasing for the entire first lap. You see at the top of the screen there, 40.1 kilometers to go, 4 laps out on the Watopia course here, as things now seem to be calming down amongst the main pack. It is obviously the Initial gaps are starting to open up, though, with the break that did happen right from the get-go. And we do see the reality of the starts of Zwift Racing immediately taking a hit to 2 riders with Team Dimension Data. It looks like the gap is about 6 seconds back from this main pack that we're looking at right now. Kofidis on the front there with the Zwift All-Stars making the way to the front, and we're going to have a lot of speed on this downhill, and that's only going to really exasperate the situation for the chase group that's off the back, because on the downhills, these groups out on Zwift, the packs just travel so incredibly fast because of the wattage that's being put out by the riders behind starts making its way to the front. The speed makes its way to the front and drives that pace forward continually. And a lot of, we do see still that 8-second gap from Healy here now taking on the caboose of this main pack. But Mugisha, Chokri, and a few others off the back. Chase group of 3, 10 seconds now. Their hope now at this point will be in this flatter section and maybe leading into that uphill. But how many matches burned for 2 of the riders with Team Dimension Data already? So definitely going to be a long day here for Mugisha and Robinson, as well as Chokri here. Connor Swift on the back of the pack, we're seeing 5.5 watts per kilogram. But on the front now, we do see an attack, maybe looking to take advantage of the fact that there are a couple off the back here making a chase. A little bit of a counter as well to the reality of the high heart rates that do come in for the starts of these races. And it is going to be up ahead there, just a little ways ahead of this main pack. It is Kim Little and one other rider. We'll see if we can get the name in here of who it is that has gone with him. And it's going to be Kim Little, as well as Richardson there has gone off the front here. So 2 riders now, Zwift All-Stars, as well as it looks like Richardson here now off the front as well. So a little bit of a tactic here from these 2 riders. We'll see if they can hold on to this gap. And we did see earlier that it was the Zwift All-Stars that may be putting in some work there for the sprinters. Now, the sprinters for that team that are going to be sitting in is going to be Steve Young and Matthew Jujon for the All-Stars. So having Kim Little go off the front here can put a little bit of weakness in the legs of the other riders here, perhaps, and the other teams to make the chase. We just see Konichev here coming out of Italy for Team Dimension Data, now going to the front and pushing the pace there to try and close this down. Madison Genesis with Connor Swift from the UK, road race national champion, also getting on the front there. Quick little 5 watts per kilogram for Connor Swift, it looks like, to try and pull things back together. Now a little bit of an uphill coming in. 3% gradient in a moment here. They will be tackling as they head out of the underground tunnel, and the breakaway is caught, and immediately Ollie Jones comes to the front for the Zwift Academy Dream Team in the green there on the front end of the pack. Now we're still looking at Richardson as he does get caught, not going to be going anywhere for these riders as these riders counter that attack here, though, with Stewart now riding for the same team, just looking to hang on. Ollie Jones pressing the pace at the front. Now it's going to be the All-Stars as well going to the front. Patton is there, though. Casey Shum is there at the front. We do have a rider going now off the front end of the pack here. It does look like it is going to be Ben Healy, I believe it is, for Wiggins Nicole. Has opened up a little bit of a gap now. There's one other rider trying to go with it here. We'll see if we can get the names in just a moment. It looks like Healy and Zwift, actually, from Madison Genesis now looking to counter this. And this is not the hand-holding, slower race that we were expecting from this group out here today. It says main pack at the bottom, but it's splintered all over the place. His riders are just looking for wheels to hold as Healy from Wiggins Nicole absolutely demolishes this group, puts it into splinters now, and everybody trying to hang onto a wheel that they're just looking to find here, just looking to hang on to whatever can be found to be in amongst the pack and to find a wheel there to reserve some energy. Coming back together after the initial attacks here, Healy, 7 watts per kilogram to try and open this out. Up. There is still 2 seconds. At this point, it could become a reality still if we do have a little bit of a calming at the front here, but it looks like Konachev there from Dimension Data pushing into 5 watts per kilogram and taking that speed into what is needed to close down the gap here pretty quickly. Only 5 minutes in, we've already seen 3 attacks and breakups of the group here. Has anybody fallen off from those attacks? It does look like there are a couple off the back here from, it looks like it is going to be Badaladi as well as McKay here. Off the back. Almeida there as well off the back. So definitely a few riders here suffering from these attacks out of Ocean Boulevard. Another Ribble Cycling rider here, it looks like going off the front there. Casey Shum following it up very quickly there. It's going to be Alex Lures from Team Ribble now. Casey Shum following up very quickly to counter those attacks coming from Healy. And will this get any kind of breathing room between them and the rest of the pack? It looks like Healy shuts it down immediately, grabs a wheel. A little bit of a gap there between Wilson from Ribble. Maybe Wilson will shut things down on the front end as he hits just a 2.3. Now grabs a wheel again. And Ollie Jones now coming up over the top of that attack here, looking to try and push the pace. A little bit of a gap here between this Ribble rider and Healy. But the reality is that the speed of the pack at this point is so high from each one of these attacks, and everybody's been able to hold on to a wheel just barely in order to hold on to that speed and use that speed of the pack to keep things all together here. So because of that, it looks like none of these are going to open up, and if anybody does have an effort to put into to open anything up, it's going to have to go into 10 watts per kilogram or more, I think, to really splinter this group. Looks like the riders now at this point just looking for a wheel. Things are calming down. Anybody with anything extra at this point would be a smart move now to try and break away, but seeing that it's been closed down so many times, maybe just calm it on down. This is the section of the course though that with this little S turns here and the 1% uphill gradient, the 2% uphill gradient, it is definitely an opportune time every lap here. Because of that uphill gradient, people have to match or do better than what you're putting out in order to close gaps down. There's also the left-hand turn off of Ocean Boulevard here over toward the Italian Village. And this section, a lot of times with this little 3% kicker here, 4%, 6% even, I think, before we hit the Italian Village and the left-hand turn past the Scotty the Squirrel Fountain. This section definitely has an opportunity if somebody would have attacked through those S-turns. It looks like things were fairly calm, though, through there, and nobody was thinking about any more counters. I believe all the riders there were just looking to hang on for dear life at that point, or perhaps the sprinters there sitting in and knowing that they weren't going to be dragging anybody along throughout this section of the course here. So Brown here, 5.7 watts per kilogram. We're seeing Team Dimension Data making their way to the front. Only 2 riders left from them. Konachev here as well as Brown. It looks like it's going to be Barnabas from SEG here. Now making the way to the front here, definitely controlling things, not sticking their nose in the wind too much at this point, though. So as we head on over toward the Scotty the Squirrel left-hand turn past the fountain, one of the it looks like we're taking a right-hand turn past the sprint section here. So no volcano on the day today, a mistake by me on this point. So we are doing a sprint competition here today, and that's about to open up here. First time through the points here, and it looks like for each of the 4 laps, the contest is going to be full on as they start to lead things out. A little bit calmer here, though, for the start of it. We'll see if we can get to the front end of the pack now, as it's 9.2 watts per kilogram, 10 watts per kilogram. Team Ribble looks to be taking this down, but Ollie Jones counters here with 13.7 watts per kilogram. The Kiwi distancing himself with 1,100 watts. Lures here trying to close it down. The Zwift All-Stars looking to come over the top there and take the second and third spot, but it looks like it's only going to be Kim Little that can grab that second. So Alex Lures looking to hang on as Ollie Jones came right on through. That opens up a gap, though, and maybe an opportunity for a breakaway here at this point. It is going to be 2 All-Stars as well as the Zwift Academy Dream Team and 1 Ribble rider with Alex Lures. A couple other behind here trying to make the chase. As we do hit up the Essies here now, this is definitely going to be the section of the course every lap that riders will be looking for opportunity to break away with a couple of uphill grinds here, very quick and punchy, gives an opportunity to put people on the back foot, especially after that sprint. We do see a feather power up being thrown by Stedman here, as Maximilian here puts out 9.3 watts per kilogram with that feather power up, opens up a gap here, and it's 1 second back. It looks like the Archibald now, Ribble Cycling now maybe trying to close that down and get involved, but chasing it down maybe not going to be the best of tactics. Allowing this to go and not bringing the rest of the pack up at this point, as they do have a couple of riders here in what could form a breakaway. Stedman now 5.5 watts per kilogram. Here for the sprint results, though, as this breakaway starts to form, it looks like, but it's going to be Ollie Jones, Kim Little, followed by Alex Lures and Casey Shum for the top 4 in those points. So Zwift Academy Dream Team starting to put their stamp on that competition today here. So with 32.3 kilometers to go, the main pack now starting to form again. That initial break up, the longest climb in the Essies, has been closed right on down. Healy here now 8.8 watts per kilogram, get back on terms. Kim Little taking a solid sprint and also be able to get back on terms. 14 second gap now opened up, though, with another few biting the dust off the back of this pack, as it has been attack after attack from the get-go here. Has not been the calm race that we were expecting on the day here, as the flatter courses, a lot of times, you know, they can be calm hand holding, main pack sticking together, but it looks like with all the breaks behind here and all the attacks one after another, people are just getting absolutely plastered off the back here today here. Alcohol now 3.8 watts per kilogram. Clays looks like taking up the front end of the group, and now we've got Healy here still that we're looking at here, 187 beats per minute right now. Obviously, the heart rate's extremely high from the tour through the Essies. And again, be looking forward to that section of the course every lap, especially with it coming immediately after a sprint. I believe the teams here who are looking for the W's could definitely, looking for the win out here today, could definitely be looking to that as the most tactical point out on course. Try and counter any of those sprints. We do see another attack here coming from Wilson now from Ribble Cycling. Followed up pretty quickly by Archibald now, throwing down some watts to hold on here. Interesting tactic here, as Archibald is just keeping the pace high enough that Wilson not really going to be able to get away with the watts he's putting out there. Just making the pace high, but it looks like that's just going to drag the rest of the group forward with them at this point here. So as we head into lap number 2 here, lap number 2 of 4, let's go ahead and get a little bit of analyzation, little race analyst info here from Mr. Greg Leo about things that have played out so far.
Thanks, Nathan. First lap of that race, pretty exciting. We saw the same exact course in round 3 of this race, round 3 of this series, except they did 3 laps instead of 4. So it'll be interesting to see how today compares to round 3. So, for instance, the first lap of this course, they finished that lap in 12:10, just 10 seconds slower than the first time around. So already they're off to a blazing start to this course. In that first sprint lap, we saw some of the same riders mix it up, including Kim Little and Alex Lures, who both took points in every intermediate sprint in round 3. But it's also nice to see Ollie Jones mixing it up in this race. He actually didn't participate in round 3, so we didn't get to see him on this course yet. You know, he's always been out. He's one of the most aggressive riders in this series, all going for that combative title in the races or the points. So it's nice to see him mixing it up on behalf of the Dream Team. And so, you know, we've got a lot of new riders in here, but also some of the same riders that we saw in round 3. So the comparison is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg. And, you know, the reality here of having Ollie Jones involved, I think, also in the final sprint, as well as being a rider who's been awarded most aggressive over and over again amongst the racers. I think that's part of what is keeping things really fast out here today. Obviously, though, with Wiggins Lecole, you know, out there today, putting down a solid attack with Ben Healy so far, all on the first lap, too. Ollie Jones, Ben Healy, we saw him up the front. Then Ribble got involved in a little bit of attack before we hit that sprint. Then we saw the All-Stars really pushing there as well after the initials, or after the first sprint. So with all those different attacks here, we definitely are seeing a situation where this group is showing up to race and not just sit and hold hands today and wait for that final sprint. Definitely making things really exciting. We always say that the racers are the ones who do make the race. And obviously, they are here to put on a show today. As far as those who are unfamiliar with Zwift, I am seeing a couple of the comments in chat there about whose numbers are we looking at out on the screen at this moment. So at any time during the broadcast here, for the numbers that you are seeing on the upper left-hand side of the screen, the current wattage, the current heart rate, as well as the RPM, that is going to match the rider who is selected on the right-hand side of the screen with the riders nearby list. So currently we are looking at Archibald here from Ribble now, and 3.9 watts per kilogram currently coming from him on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can see in the upper left-hand side of the screen there, 300 watts from him, 151 beats per minute, and 90 RPMs. As we do select other riders, though, it will be those riders that you're seeing their numbers for. It's not always Archibald's numbers in the upper left-hand corner. It's always the riders that are selected, the rider that is selected on the right-hand side. Now we are switching up over the Cofidis rider from Belgium. There is going to be Clays, and now you can see that rider's number in the upper left-hand side. For the current gradients they are experiencing on their smart trainers, you will be able to see that in the mini-map on the upper right-hand side of the screen, as well as the course profile underneath the mini-map. You can just kind of see that just a little bit as a translucent over the mini-map, as well as the turns that are coming up currently. At the top, obviously, you do have the current speed of the rider that is selected, as well as the kilometers they have traveled and the current time into the race. Those also, as far as the details for what you're seeing on screen, you see those power-ups that are being popped as we hit this 3% uphill gradient now, being a crucial time on course. These riders are definitely going to be looking for advantage to reserve energy or make an attack here. That feather power-up, that green one over the top of the Madison Genesis rider's head that is Joey Walker, is going to be the feather power-up, reduces the weight of the rider for 15 seconds. Now, you notice how those other power-ups, those truck power-ups, which are the drafting power-ups, are lasting a little bit longer than the feather power-up. That's because those last 30 seconds and reduce the power you have to put out in order to hang on to the rider that is in front of you or that you are drafting off, obviously, at that time. That is the drafting power-up. The strongest one we have not seen so far yet, because I think anyone who does have one is going to be reserving it. That is the arrow power-up, and it does reduce the drag on your avatar significantly for 30 seconds straight. A lot of these riders, being on a flatter course, knowing it may come down to a sprint, are going to be holding on to that arrow power-up to try and win the sprint at the end, especially on the lead-out for the sprint here, on that downhill. On the Watopia forward into the finish banner there is one of the fastest sprint sections. It's one of the oldest sprint sections. And the arrow power-up, because of that reduction of the drag, becomes so incredibly important, specifically on a downhill into a flat situation for a sprint here. So I think anybody who does have an arrow power-up is going to be doing their best to reserve energy and reserve that power-up for that final sprint, unless they get into a situation where they absolutely need to use it just to hang on with the main pack today. If you're wondering how you get power-ups, it is going to be, you are going to be able to get them through the banners that you go underneath. So every time that a rider goes through the lap banner or the sprint banner today, they will be able to gain a power-up through the random number generator that is the scroll through on the power-ups that they see on the top of their screen. We do not see them on our screen as we are in spectator mode, but if you were watching from their first-person point of view on their computer, you'd be able to see where the power-ups do land in the upper left-hand side of the screen here. So currently looking here at C. Brown, though, coming from Team Dimension Data out of South Africa, 4.9 watts per kilogram to hang on to the front end of this pack here now, and driving the pace 44 kilometers per hour. Team Ribble now making the way to the front, it looks like, here with Bigham. as well as Team Dimension Data that are toward the front. Really taking over the front end of this pack here, Brown as well as Konachev. Interesting to see without having, just the two of them in the main pack here and a couple of the riders off the back. Definitely been doing a lot of work today toward the front end of this pack, even though they do not have too many riders involved still. I would be expecting them to maybe be sitting in a little bit more and reserving some energy, but it looks like they're trying to drive this pace perhaps and drop a few riders off. Doesn't look like it's going to be succeeding at this point. Ribble now making the way to the front, though, in the black kit. It's going to be SEG, followed up by Wiggins Lacole as well with Ben Healy, it looks like here. Walker there making the way to the front with Madison Genesis as well. And now on the right-hand side there, or left-hand side of the screen there, right-hand side of the pack is Dimension Data back to the front. Looks like a good rotation here in the pack, driving the pace. And a lot of the teams, it looks like just kind of working together, or perhaps in the riders' minds here, it is just kind of a holding on to position and making sure that they do not find themselves off the back through this section of the course. It is a section of the course where you can quickly open up some gaps here. You do see Connor Swift at the back, as well as his teammate here. It looks like Ian Bibby. Just for a moment there, a little bit of a lax and a little bit of a gap opened up, it looked like. So as you can see, everybody, even the leaders of the team series at this point, in threat at this point of the course, as there is that 1% uphill gradient and a little bit of S-turns that can easily find yourself in definitely trouble off the back here. So now as we hit this little 3% uphill gradient here, it's going to be Zhujian to the front. First time I've seen him stick his nose in the wind. Sprint number 2 coming up, and I think this is in order to set things up for the next sprint here as number 2 on the day, and it definitely looks like the All-Stars are trying to take down the sprints here as we head into this Italian village. It is going to ramp up, and as far as the way that you want to play the sprint here out on course, it's all about taking that speed into, obviously, the final 300 to 200 meters here. And we do see riders trying to set up as best as they possibly can. It does reward kicks out on Zwift. High watt per kilogram kicks really are rewarded in those final 100 meters. We did see in the women's race yesterday, just barely won right at the line with a very well-timed kick by Harriet Owen over the top of the Zwift Academy Dream Team's Mary Wilkinson. Very early attack here from Stedman, though. If nobody grabs onto his wheel, it could be successful, but we do see the Zwift Academy Dream Team immediately jumping on terms with that. Kim Little now following it up there very quickly, sitting on the wheel there of Ollie Jones. Ollie Jones trying to follow it up using a drafting power-up. We don't see any arrow power-ups being used, but that is definitely going to be a smart move with that drafting power-up, reserving to the last minute. But no, it's going to be Bigham coming right on through, using that draft really well, up into 12 watts per kilogram. We'll see if we can get back to the front end, and it looks like it's going to be Bigham able to walk away with that. But perhaps Ollie Jones came across there just at the last moment. We saw Lurs and Casey Shum, Archibald, Ollie Jones, Kim Little all involved there. We'll see if we can get a replay with that, as we did lose the front end for just a moment. Looking at Richardson here now following things up quickly, and it looks like it's Bigham here now making his way to the front here. And it was Alex Lures actually able to hold on. Ollie Jones tried to snip it at the line there, but unable to do so. Able to hold on to second there. Archibald followed by Casey Shum. A very different overall there than we saw for the sprint results on lap number 1. So I have a feeling we're going to see, as far as the overall for the sprint competition, a lot of change-ups in the next 2 laps. And a lot of riders here really interested here in taking that overall for the sprint. Now, Richardson here easily grabbing back on to the wheels here of the main pack, and it looks like no attacks through here, calming things down compared to last lap. Last lap we saw a lot of splinterings of the group. It looks like everybody who's going to be hanging on for the duration of the attacks and the main pack's efforts have done so. And perhaps we might see things calm down a little bit more because of that. All of the efforts of the first lap maybe tired a few of the riders out here and really trying to back off a little bit, as sometimes the pace, when you have crazy starts like that and really high pace from the get-go, the reality of what was put out on the first lap starts to kick in, and I have a feeling that we are seeing that lull now a little bit after a lot of first lap attacks here, and we might not see a whole lot in lap number 3. We'll have to wait and see, but now to the front, it does look like it is going to be Alexander Konachev as well as Dan Bigham still to the front here. Canyon DHB presented by Blorholmes with Alexander Richardson is also heading to the front, it looks like here. And we're looking at Stewart, though, as well T. Stewart, 3.8 watts per kilogram, 147 beats per minute. So things definitely calming down here for Tom Stewart. 148, not a very high heart rate actually at this point. So it looks like perhaps Stewart going to be somebody to watch out for a sprint there, as 148, very chill for some of these riders here. Patton we're looking at here as well for Canyon DHB now. About 4.6 watts per kilogram has been averaged by this rider here. As far as the riders that have been putting out the highest efforts out on the day here, you know, we're looking at Ben Healy up into 5.4 watts per kilogram for the duration, putting out a huge amount of work. Most likely that average was raised up by the attacks that he put out on the first lap out there today. As far as those who have kept it fairly calm on the day, I'd definitely be thinking about Stevie Young out there today, because Stevie Young at 4.3 watts per kilogram, Matthew Jujan at 4.4. So definitely the Zwift All-Stars sprinters are sitting in and just looking for the draft out there today. Team Ribble now to the front again. We are seeing Archibald here with Bigham now. Wilson following up. This is 3 on the front from Team Ribble. Ollie Jones now going with it as well. This is a dangerous attack, but they have to hold on to this gap now at this point. All-Stars going right along with it. Guevara's there from the Zwift Academy Dream Team. Again, the situation is the teams see to go to the front, and they seem to want to organize an attack, but then their own presence seems to be shutting it down because they're putting maybe just a little bit too much effort with those who are supposed to be shutting down the pack instead of dragging the pack along with them. So it's also the timing of those attacks, perhaps a little bit more of a waiting game as we see the Cofidis rider here on the front. Let's head back over to Greg Leo, our race analyst, the mad scientist himself, to hear about how things have gone so far on the stats of the day.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. You know, I think this race is absolutely going to come down to power-ups, as you were saying. You know, we see all the sprinters sitting in, waiting, hoping for that arrow power-up. I know I talked to Alex West at the beginning of this race, and he told me the plan is I'm going to look for that arrow. I'm going to hang on to it. I crunched the numbers. There are 7 opportunities to get an arrow power-up on this course, since they're doing 4 laps. They have an opportunity at the sprint point and at the start-finish banner. And the chance that you're going to get an arrow power-up, if you're trying to, is 80%. So I think we're going to see a lot of the racers come into that final sprint with an arrow power-up. It's all going to come down to, can you keep that power-up? Can you conserve it? Try not to use it. Try not to get off the back, and just sit in, wait, use that power-up correctly. So yeah, I think that's what it's going to come down to here, Nathan.
Yeah, 100% there on the power-ups here. You know, 80% chance is extremely high. And for those of you who are wondering, those who are used to going out and collecting power-ups, again, a recent update. We've been mentioning this a couple times during the broadcast, but if you're just coming back in with the racing and the reality of how Zwift events are held in relation to power-ups, they recently had an update in the last month or so where power-ups can no longer be taken into the pens. So you do have to go out there and grab those for that 80% chance. So riders that you're seeing using the power-ups right now are most likely looking for that specific power-up through each of the banners here. But with an 80% chance, you know, I think a lot of riders here are going to be holding on to whatever they can. We did see a couple more used, obviously, last time through this 3% gradient uphill here in just a moment out of the Ocean Boulevard. But I have a feeling as we go further and further onto the race, because people will be looking for that, we won't see quite as many power-ups being used. It is a little bit of information, though, that the riders are giving you as they do use those heading into each of these sections. And you do know, obviously, that somebody doesn't have one heading into the next section if they're using a drafting power-up or a feather power-up out there. We haven't seen, I don't think, any arrow power-ups at this point, though. So we'll have to keep track of who's using what, though, and get an idea of what might be able to happen in the final sprint. Heading to the front now, we do have Kim Little from the Zwift All-Stars team, community team that's been extremely successful so far, holding down the second and third place so far in the series standing. It's going to be the Zwift Academy Dream Team and the Zwift All-Stars. And Madison Genesis obviously walking away with almost 100 points extra over the top of everybody else at this point. Can they be taken down on the day here today? That is the question, I think, in everybody's head, because they have been absolutely unstoppable in Zwift racing. up until this point, just about. I mean, obviously, Team Ribble taking down a couple of W's there. The Zwift All-Stars showing up, the Zwift Academy Dream Team showing up and getting on the podiums here. But otherwise, it's kind of just been the Madison Genesis show all day. So we'll see if anybody... And also the question is as well, can some of the other teams start, putting their stamp of approval on the podium here today? Obviously we've got Canyon DHB is out there. They've been showing up on the day. We've got obviously also SCG Racing still involved. Team Wiggins Lacoa, I think, are hungry out there. Oliver's Real Food Racing, I think, still is in the mix here in the green jerseys. So watch out. We do see now Casey Shumdo, speaking of the All-Stars, making the way to the front with a feather power-up, using that at the most opportune time to try and make a little bit of a gap here, and knowing that he's looking for that arrow power-up still, it's a great time to try and put some hurt in the legs of the other riders. Walker closed things right on down on him as well. We see a couple other of those feather power-ups being used, try and reserve some energy, maybe even get away. Now the counter move here comes, it looks like, from Team Ribble. It's Alex Lurs, I believe, trying to get off the front here. No, it's Wilson, excuse me, getting off the front there with Konachev, and it's going to be Ollie Jones here shutting it right on down. Will there be a counter now? The question is, will they let this go just a little bit and then close it down so they don't bring the pack with them? It looks like they're confident, though, that there may not be a wheel to grab from the main pack here in a moment. No, it looks like their interest was just in shutting it down and maybe having a sprint for the finish. Now, as far as the tactics go, a lot of times for Zwift Racing, if you want to cause a break, you do want to let that gap open up just a little bit, because if you continue to push 6, 7, 8 watts per kilogram on the front end of the pack, the riders right behind you most likely be able to hold 5 or 6 watts per kilogram, and it's going to get shut down pretty quickly. As I was speaking about there, we did see the Ribble rider there get away just a little bit. Ollie may have, if he wanted to, really cause a break, allowed that to go out just by about 5 seconds, and then shut it down with a quick little 12 watt per kilogram kick, open up a gap immediately between himself and the other riders, and not drag that pack up with him. The way that Ollie did shut that down, it looks like he is mainly interested in keeping the pack all together and not really going with any kind of a break at this point. A lot of times with Zwift Racing, you got to take a little bit of a risk in order to really get a gap to form by allowing it to get a little, if 2 or 3 riders go, you let that go, because as soon as you get into that 5, 6, 7 riders, it turns into a train that is just long enough for the rest of the main pack to grab onto and get a draft on. So it's all about big kicks, really strong sprints, almost just about everything you got to get away from a pack that has the kind of strength that we're seeing out here today, especially having all pro level riders amongst this pack. It's going to be a huge effort to try and get away. Maybe with a pack that's not quite as strong as this, you could get away with a 8, 9 watt per kilogram steady on the front, get away with that, but it's just not going to happen with this kind of firepower here. And if you do want to get away, it's going to have to be 10, 12 watts per kilogram kicks with 2 or 3 riders there off the front. Let that go a little bit and then close that gap down as quickly as you possibly can without riders directly on your wheels here. So the interesting question here for me, though, on the day is, with such a dominant performance from those 3 teams we've been speaking about every time, it's the Zwift All-Stars, the Zwift Academy Dream Team, and Madison Genesis, will we see a change-up at all here with these riders? With Canyon DHB sitting in 5th place, Ribble Pro Cycling in 4th place. We've seen Ribble really involved in the race here today. They've been trying to take down the sprint competitions. We've seen them take a couple W's out there in the series here, but they're sitting there with 172 points. Zwift All-Stars with 222. We also seen Canyon DHB there in 5th place. Dimension Data still involved with 2 riders. Wiggins Lacoa sitting in 7th place. Those teams are going to be the ones I think that are going to be really interested in some sort of series changes. But there's also the reality of just trying to get on the podium there and show off for the team and the sponsors out there with Oliver Real Racing, as well as Hoggins Berman Axie, and SEG is still involved here as well. So those teams still looking for a W out there today still, and in the whole series. And we'll see if they can change things up as far as this domination coming from Madison Genesis throughout the series so far. Left-hand turn here in just a moment, and we're heading uphill into the Italian Village. Off the front just a little bit here. I believe it's Canyon DHB with an attack here. Ribble, though, taking over the front now as we see Archibald now. And then it's going to be teammate Alex Lurs trying to grab onto the lead out, perhaps, as Lurs has been really involved in these sprint sections. We head into sprint number 3 in just a moment here. Dimension Data is now making the way to the front here, just following every one of the attacks here. It looks like Team Dimension Data has been really interested in just making sure they do not find themselves too far back in the pack. Hasn't been necessarily sticking their nose in the wind too much, but always seem to be wanting to be within that top 5 at all times to try and find those drafts at the front here, almost treating it like the crit racing that you would see in real life. Is not moving forward, you are moving backwards. Quickly find yourself off the back. So definitely an attentive Team Dimension Data out there today. C. Brown there now making their way forward right around the middle of the pack here. Connor Zwift now leading things out from Madison Genesis, perhaps. We haven't seen Madison Genesis very interested so far, though, in these sprint competitions. Obviously, they're focused, laser focused, it seems like today, on the overall and the W out there because they are the current defending leaders of the series here. We do see Casey Shum on the front now. Now it's going to be, Alex West here, 8 watts per kilogram. Alex Lurs now kicks up to 15 watts per kilogram with 200 meters to go. That might be enough to win it here. 15 watts per kilogram, 189 beats per minute. That's up into 1,000 watts here. But Ollie Jones coming on through, it looks like, and taking it right at the line. Lures comes across for second. It looks like it is going to be Maximilian Stedman there for Canyon across the line for third. We'll get the official results here in just a moment. But solid lead out there from Alex Lurs. Accidental lead out perhaps, though, for Ollie Jones, as Ollie was able to hold on to enough watts for a final kick across the line for that sprint competition on lap number 3. They'll have one more shot at the sprint competition in just a moment, but that sprint now did open up a 2-second gap. Ollie Jones takes it down. Alex Lurs, now Maximilian Stedman, followed by John Archibald for 4th place. We'll have to wait and see how that ends up playing out for the totals on the sprint competition for the day, as we've got one more ahead of us, which will definitely be a little bit, of a wrench in the tactics for some of the riders that are looking to just win outright in a sprint, because it is so close to the line. I think it's just about 2 or 3 kilometers out from the finish line, and having a sprint competition like that, and a gap to close down immediately. I wonder if some of the teams have thought about, okay, we know the sprint competition is here. Who's going to go for it and try and make a break? While some other teams might be thinking, who's going to be the workhorse that closes down the gap because of that sprint competition, sacrifice themselves before the sprint. That's most likely what they're going to have to be thinking about, is that one of the riders, because of the sprint competition in this SE section, we're going to have a rider be the sacrificial lamb out there and make sure we set up our sprinters well so they're not wasting too much energy through this SEs after that sprint competition. So it definitely throws a whole nother tactic into the race here, where you can't just kind of sit in and wait, cover moves. You definitely have to have somebody who is set up for that workhorse to the final here, and kind of makes it a little bit more like in real life racing, closing down those gaps here in the final 2 or 3 kilometers as well. Now Lures looks like here up into now into 3.9 or so. Walker here, it looks like from Madison Genesis, though, making his way to the front here, 162 beats per minute now. So how many do we have left in the pack, though? That is the question. It's been so incredibly fast from the get-go, and it whittled it down. Almost immediately, we had 3 off the back here, and it whittled it down to 40 riders. Then quickly into lap number 2, we saw a few riders fall off through the SEs here that we were just leaving, though, and as we headed into lap number 2. And it whittled down eventually to 27 riders amongst this main pack. What's interesting is that every single lap, we do see Team Ribble using this downhill to take the speed as high as they possibly can. It's interesting that they're attacking through these sections, as the pack definitely has an advantage over any attack through this section. Now the question is he just ramping up the speed to launch another rider off the front as it does level out, and the speeds come right on down for the pack as it levels out through the lap banner here in just a second? I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a Team Ribble rider counter, and that's exactly what just happened. Archibald goes immediately after they hit the flat section and looking to maybe have a breakaway, as we did see Ed Hopper, his teammate out on the Innsbruck course, do a final lap breakaway and walk away with the win. Doesn't look like Archibald's going to make this happen, though. Casey Shum bridges it up to the rider there. Zwift All-Stars shutting it right on down. Archibald shuts down the attack, though, seeing that maybe it's not going anywhere. 3.8 watts per kilogram coming from Archibald now, as he is brought back into the main pack. 9.8 kilometers to go as we head into the final lap, round number 9 of the KISS Super League out here today. Will Madison Genesis make it happen again, or will it be one of the teams that have not taken a win out there so far? Of those teams I'd be watching out for, obviously Canyon DHB presented by Blower Homes is still out there. We still got Dimension Data involved. Team Wiggins Co is out there as well. SEG in the blue and pink and white kit. Be watching out for them. I mean, these teams got to be hungry. The question is, will they have the power when it comes down to it today? And I do not believe Ribble are too interested in the sprint. We got Wilson off the front now, and Team Ribble just keeps throwing everything they got at this pack. They're throwing their chips all on the table, saying, we do not want to invest in a sprint final here. Casey Shum actually does not have an interest in bringing the pack back together. It looks like Casey most likely going to be putting his bets on a breakaway situation, not being the best sprinter amongst this type of talent. Casey Shum definitely going to be a solid TT specialist out there, coming from triathlon as well as a little bit of road time trialing. State champion, actually, for his home state of Illinois in real life. So Casey Shum definitely one who can work with one of these pros and try and get away, but it looks like that's going to be shut down real quickly as we head into the underground tunnel for the final time with the main pack here, all back together. And 3.5 watts per kilogram coming from Casey Shum for the Zwift All-Stars. 165 beats per minute. That's about a tempo pace for Casey, I believe. He's got probably about 10 to 15 beats left in him, so maybe a threshold pace here coming from the man himself, Casey Shum. Probably the most experienced racer out on Zwift amongst this entire pack. I would think he does have the most races amongst any of the riders here, all the way back in beta up until today. We're talking 4 years of Zwift racing for this rider. The only other rider I would say would most likely be Kim Little, who's riding on his team as well, former UK national champion of Zwift. You know, he may still currently have that because the British Cycling Championships live event is happening next week. So he may still have that on his back here, as the qualifiers did happen, and we haven't seen that final just yet. So we could say Kim Little still the reigning UK national champion of Zwift out here. That is Casey Shum's teammate for the Zwift All-Stars now. So watch out for them in a sprint. A lot of experience in those riders with the timing that comes with this downhill section into the sprint. A lot of experience is going to be really important for it, but there is just so much power amongst these riders. We have a little bit of break now taking place here with one of the riders here. Richardson from Canyon DHB now off the front with a feather power up, now being followed up very quickly here. Casey Shum looking to get involved in a break. Every time something tries to get away here, Casey is right on top of it here, and this seems to be the tactic here from both the All-Stars as well as Ribble and Canyon DHB. They have been looking to get away. I think the reason why is because the experience of the pack has been that Madison Genesis and Zwift Academy Dream Team are so incredibly strong in the sprints that they know that it's going to be almost impossible to take them down amongst these riders here, and they want to definitely at least put a little bit of hurt in the legs of Madison Genesis as well as the Zwift Academy Dream Team. Force them to make some chases here. They're going to force a little bit of effort out of those riders rather than just let them sit in and put it all down to that final 200 kilometers or so. So this is a really smart move actually here coming from Canyon DHB and the Zwift All-Stars here, trying to take a little bit of pep out of the legs of the Dream Team as well as Madison Genesis. Walker here looking to close things down perhaps behind as we look at Casey Shum in that Zwift All-Stars kick now off the front here, trying to keep this gap. Richardson now trying to find that wheel again and work together with the rider here up ahead, but it's going to be Bigham here closing things down with Wilson as well. They're just a little ways behind. Kofit is still involved with Clays there, it looks like. Konachev now at the front there of the pack at Team Dimension Data. Wilson now driving it there at 7.0 watts per kilogram. The pack trying to bring this back. It's going to be a steady effort, though, from the pack. Not really a situation where it's going to help the break, but rather it's just going to shut things right on down. Grabs the wheel here. Wilson from Ribble now, it looks like, shutting it down. Will there be a counter is the question here to try and get away. I would be surprised if it comes from the Zwift Academy Dream Team or Madison Genesis. I think they're really thinking about the sprint at the end here, as well as just who has anything left after that little 3% gradient uphill climb. It's a real kick to try and hang on through that section, especially if they're closing down gaps in that 7-8 watts per kilogram. But here comes Ribble to the front. Dan Bigham now, number 132, making his way to the front, but just shutting it right on down. Does not look like he has a lot of interest in really making any kind of a break happen. Was just looking for the front of the pack now. Stewart from Canyon DHB now coming to the front. The green kits of Zwift Academy Dream Team coalescing to the front, making sure that they're not going anywhere. At the back, we see nothing but Zwift All-Stars holding on to the riders' wheels. They're reserving as much energy as they possibly can. And no surprise, it's Stevie Young at the back there, as well as Matthew Jujan, looking for the W in the sprint. We've been talking about them as far as the hopes of the Zwift All-Stars today. It's going to be Jujan. It's going to be Stevie Young. They have been reserving every ounce of energy. They've not been mentioned, I don't think, not once at the front end of the pack. They've just been following wheels and making sure they're involved in the main pack, allowing the riders to try and get away. We do see a ramp up here coming from Maximilian Stedman here. Stedman perhaps trying to make something happen and not looking for that final sprint. We did see it up into about 9 watts per kilogram momentarily. Now a counter here coming from Casey Shum. Looks like trying to, again, get involved in this is their breakaway, man. We see all the other teams doing something, and Casey just following it up and trying to get involved with that breakaway. Konachev now going to the front. Shum, 6.5 watts per kilogram, covering it immediately. And the All-Stars here just trying to put anybody they can into a break. A little bit of cat and mouse play here coming from Zwift All-Stars as well. Knowing that Stevie Young is in there, knowing that Jujan's been sitting in, Casey's just going to put everything on the line here to try and soften up the legs of the rest of the riders and force the favorites that are out there in the green, in the red and blue and black that is Madison Genesis, to chase things down. If they want to take the W, they're going to have to close down these gaps every single time. And that's just what's happening as we do see every time it does go out. It is the Zwift Academy Dream Team as well as Madison Genesis having to close down those gaps that are open up. Back into the false flat for the final time. Onto the S-turns. We'll be taking a left-hand turn over toward the Scotty the Squirrel Fountain and the final sprint on the day in just a moment here. Clay's at the front there from Kofidis, it looks like here. And the All-Stars also making the way to the front. As far as the power that's put out so far, and amongst the sprinters who has been reserving as much as they can amongst these riders, we actually see it looks like it is going to be Matthew Jujan with a 4.2 watts per kilogram and his teammate so far for an average watts per kilogram, 4.2 as well for Stevie Young, matching each other's effort almost perfectly, following wheels. And as far as being able to reserve energy, Madison Genesis has done plenty of that as well, with Connor Swift with a 4.4 watts per kilogram out there. I would watch out for Connor Swift. He's been reserving a lot of energy out there. Obviously having Ian Bibby as the rider that's been scoring most of the podiums for them. But Archibald going with a very early attack here. 13 watts per kilogram coming from on a perfect section to try and get away. That's on that uphill gradient into a nice little winding bend downhill. At that negative 4% gradient, he's going to be carrying so much of that speed he brought over up at the top. And at 6 seconds, actually, Casey Shum, this is a move he cannot follow. He just lets it go at this point, it looks like, with the 4.7 watts per kilogram, driving the pace just a little bit. Now backs it right on off, showing that this is the work that he does not want to do. He wants to allow the other teams, I believe, at this point to close this right on down. Brown from Team Dimension Data making his way from Alex West there as well, but it's only 4 watts per kilogram. They do not seem to believe that this is going to stick, and maybe that's because of the sprint here that is coming up. But the question is going to be, is the sprint effort going to be enough to close this down? It's only 6 seconds at this point, and who is going to explode from this pack in order to close this down and take down that final sprint? But the question is, will they be able to close down 5 seconds in this final 300 meters to the sprint competition? Archibald looking to be an upset in the sprint competition. Stedman goes 4.8, but nobody's in the orange numbers yet. There's only about 150 meters to the line here. Archibald's got 3, but Lures is coming through. Team Ribble here looking to try and take those final points. Ollie Jones holding on, it looks like, right to the line. Will be Ollie Jones. No, it looks like it's Alex. Perhaps Archibald might have held on. It was very close there at the line. We'll have to wait for the official results from the sprint competition, but a counterattack very quickly here coming from Stedman with a feather power being launched there before they even hit the line. So he was looking for those random number generator games in his favor because he threw down that feather power before they came through the sprint competition. So did he get lucky and hit that arrow power-up when he came through? Only time will tell when we see him use his final power-up on the day. He might have got experience. He might not even have a power-up, but the question is, what did he get when he came through that final banner here? Alex Lewis here now, 6.6 watts per kilogram just behind, but there's a solo man breakaway for Canyon off the front at this point. This rider's put out 5.1 watts per kilogram average for the duration of the race so far, and now he's got to hold a 7.0 plus most likely to try and hold on. Max Maximilian Stedman for Canyon DHB Blower Homes, looking to be the hero for that team and take their first win in the series, but at 190 beats per minute plus. Can he do it? Number 33 looks to be shut down by Team Ribble. Dan Bigham doing a whole lot of work on the front end for the rest of his team, but it's going to be Konachev now still involved up and out of the saddle. Team Dimension Data trying to make something happen here just a little bit. Will there be a counter? I have a feeling it's going to calm right on down, and it will be that calm before the storm, in the eye of the storm here, but we're about to have a hurricane of power here in just a moment as we exit the Essies and head on into that final drag race that is the downhill into the flat on the most classic sprint section out on the Watopia course here. Now Bigham here, we are seeing 7.4 watts per kilogram coming to him, 175 beats per minute. Who's going to take the W out there today? Chat, let everybody know who you think is going to be the favorite. Will it be Madison Genesis with another W? Will it be an upset from a team that needs to come up in the standings here? Will Canyon be able to pull it off? SEG still involved here. Will it be Zwift Academy Dream Team to take down their nemesis that is Madison Genesis here? And we're setting up for the final 500 meters here to the line. Alex Lur's at the front now. Team Ribble leading things out. McEvoy here as well now for Madison Genesis now starting to kick. We haven't seen them stick their nose in the wind once, but here come the orange numbers from Madison Genesis, the drafting power-ups to start, but we're about to see a flurry of aero power-ups, but Stevie Young without a power-up goes way early because he knows without that power-up he has to put them on the back foot. 19 watts per kilogram from Dan Bigham. Bigham's got the aero power-up and he's got the watts to follow up with it. I don't know if I've ever seen 19 watts per kilogram from a rider out on Zwift, but it's up and over 1,000. Ian Bibby looking to close it down, though, and it's going to be Bibby, it looks like. Did he make it happen? We'll have to wait for the final results there. I believe Bibby might have nipped him out of line, but our camera shot out for just a moment there. It looked like it was. It looked like it may have been Bigham from Team Ribble just barely holding on, but Bibby was coming on absolutely like a freight train at the line there. We'll have a replay in just a moment here as we're about to see what was the result there. Round number 9, the final sprint there for the KISS Super League on round number 9. Ian Bibby just nipping it there at the line. It looked like it was going to be Bigham. He had such an attack, but Ian Bibby held on to the perfect timing to come through with that final kick to the line. And as you can see, the tactics are so important because Dan Bigham, he had the kick. I mean, way more of a kick than any of the other riders. I don't think anybody came close to 19 watts per kilogram amongst them, but it was just a little bit early. If there was just a little bit more patience there, I believe he would have held on. But there it was, Ian Bibby, perfectly timed. It was in the final like 20 meters coming across there with just a perfect kick and amount of speed. And Bigham trying to hold on there. There comes Bibby. It looks like almost nipped at the line as well by the Zwift Academy Dream Team, but amazing result there for Madison Genesis. Again, showing their domination and pure power and tactics in Zwift racing. So, first place overall, Ian Bibby again taking down another win in this KISS Super League. Dan Bigham from Ribble Pro Cycling showing up on the day, obviously, and bringing them up in the results for the overall again. Maybe trying to grab that third spot overall. Have to wait for the team standings. Brad Gaveris followed up by Ollie Jones and Alex West. Look at that. 3 in a row. Swift Academy Dream Team, obviously well-oiled machine there, and going to be holding on to a lot of points because of those results. Matthew Jujon and Stevie Young, as we said, the hopefuls for the Zwift All-Stars for the sprint. Then it's Alexander Richardson for Canyon DHB Blower Homes, just a little ways back at 1.5 seconds for 8th place. Joey Walker from Madison Genesis holding down a solid result for Madison Genesis, but not quite as many Madison Genesis boys in the top 10, so perhaps a little bit of less points on the week here. Kim Little for the Zwift All-Stars there, throwing down for 10th. Solid result for them. So what an amazing race out there. I think we're going to have Greg Leo here to have a little chat about how things were playing out here. Greg, what'd you think of the sprint there? I mean, I thought that Ribble was going to hang on to it, but obviously Bibby has the timing down to take down a sprint almost perfectly. He's shown us time and time again, Greg.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, the thing about that sprint was we saw Bigham race on this course in round 3, but he took a totally different tactic. He attacked with about 1K to go. You know, but then in round 7, he had such success in the sprint on that New York course, I think he was switching up his tactic. He won that round 7 with a long sprint, just like he tried to execute today. But Bibby, with the experience on this course, having raced 80 times, probably a dozen times on this course itself, knew exactly how to time that, exactly how to take advantage of that aero power up and the draft. So I think he timed that sprint perfectly today, and that's where the experience on this course, on Zwift, pays off.
Yeah, we've seen time again and again, I think, with this specific section of the course where this classic Watopia final sprint being all about that last 100 meters, because there's so much speed coming out of that that little cave tunnel, leaving the Essies. And you just got to really have so much patience, because that pack just comes on and keeps having this exponential gain of speed as the sprinters just keep on opening up and opening up. And if you don't have that patience, even if you have the kick to the line, or you have that kind of kick that we saw from Bigham there with that 19, I mean, I don't think anybody came close to the kind of power we saw from him. But there was the reality of the timing there from Bibby, as well as almost a drag race to the line, which might favor just a little bit more than just a pure kick there from some of the other riders there. I mean, speak to that a little bit as far as that goes.
Well, another thing about that sprint is it's totally blind. I mean, well, it's not totally blind, but you come into the sprint kind of taking a right-hand turn, and you can't see the banner. So knowing exactly where that banner is and how it feels to come close to it when you should use the aero power-up, I think that's part of it too. You have to know the dynamics of the pack, how they're going to react when riders start going, and that's all part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Having that experience, obviously, Bibby and the rest of Madison Genesis there, they were sitting in most of the race there too, knowing the course, and then really, obviously, they're looking for the overall wins, being the series leaders. They're defending. They're in the yellow jersey type situation right now, and they're just going to defend that overall lead. Obviously, not going for the sprints much here at all. So let's go ahead and take a look at some replays here of how things played out for the race. It looks like we do have some highlights here, as we are seeing Casey Shum with some of the initial attacks here, or actually the final lap attacks here. 34.6 kilometers into the race, we see Casey Shum and a few others. Actually, Casey Shum, I would say, following almost every one of the attacks here from some of the teams. Canon DHB trying to get away, not looking for a sprint. We saw Dimension Data. Now we're looking at Kofidis here involved up toward the front here. Now we see Konishev there going. Ribble here going very early with Archibald here, trying to set up most likely Alex Lurs perhaps with a solid situation to counter as they were making some of the other teams chase. That seemed to work out fairly well for them, as we do see Alex coming on through that final sprint here. As we head into the final 3K, though, we are seeing off the front Stedman with what an amazing attack here. It looked maybe hopeful, but he was have to open up quite a gap to hold on to this here. It was closed down pretty quickly here by Alex Lurs, 7.0 watts per kilogram on the front of the main pack there. Ben Healy, it looks like, just trying to hang on at 195 beats per minute into that final. So at 195, not a whole lot in the reserves for the sprint here. Stevie Young, the first one to go without an aero power-up. That's why he did that. Tried to get away, but it wasn't going to happen there. And now there's the big attack from Bigham up into that 1,100 watts or so, but was unable to hang on to it, as we saw Ian Bibby come across the line in first place. Amazing racing all around from the KISS Super League men's round number 9. Absolutely great racing. Really, really strong attacks left and right. Everybody, put on a great show there today, but Madison Genesis ends up on top, and still on top in the team points with 390 points. Zwift Academy Dream Team with 3. We had 3rd place, 4th place, and 5th place. Obviously, open up the gap now between them and the Zwift All-Stars again. Zwift All-Stars holding on solid with that 3rd place and quite a few in the top 10 still. Now in 4th place, Ribble Pro Cycling. Now really solidifying themselves in 4th. And then it's going to be Canyon DHB in 5th there. Dimension Data for 6th. Team Wins the Cole for 7th. Vitus Pro Cycling with 89 points, tied with Hagens Berman Axion. There you can see in 9th. Real close race here with SCG and Hagens Berman and Vitus Pro Cycling. We'll have to wait and see how that top 10 is going to end up playing out between those riders. Oliver's Road Racing, Cofidis, Novo Nordisk, and Pro Cycling Sunshine Coast, Israel Cycling Academy, and Arapahoe BMC Hincapie rounding out that top 15. So that is going to be it today for us for the KISS Super League round number 9. I'm Nathan Guerra here, and next race is going to be next week for the KISS Super League round number 6, I believe it is, for the women's side of things. And then it's going to be our final for the men's next Wednesday. Make sure to be tuning in for that. And don't forget, be watching for the British Cycling National Championships final live. We're going to have live riders for the men's and the women's over in the UK. So it's also going to be broadcast, I believe, on national television over there on BT. So be watching out for that. BT Sports 1 is where that is going to be. Make sure to tune in for that. It's going to be super exciting. I got a plane to catch. Head on over there for some awesome in real life racing. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure to hit those follow buttons, all those places to catch all things Zwift that you are currently watching. And as always, everybody, ride on.